So after the last podcast that we did, I've been inundated. I have. I've been
Inundated.
inundated, is it? Inundated or
It
inundated?
doesn't matter, we know what you mean.
With fan mail. Two of them. No. So, start again. I got inundated or inundated. I've got to get that right.
It's inundated. Today's podcast, which is about motivation.
We want something to motivate people that's going to last.
You want a kind of a program, don't you? It's an ongoing thing, motivation. It's not a one-hit wonder.
That's right.
But you do have to go back and you know, there has to be a strategy for how you kind of keep working and, you know, on keeping people on board really and keeping them moving forward. So I think that's, to me, when I think about motivation, that's what I think about in the context of that. What ongoing things are going on that keeps people interested, engaged? Are they growing? You know, rather than going in, oh, I had a great day and it was fantastic and it was wonderful, and then a week later everyone's back and it's the same.
So it reminds me of when we started in business, and I've touched on this in the first podcast about the education that we used to go on, and there was three goals that the business had, and the first goal was to be the best in the area, and so it was a goal that everybody was involved in. It meant that even from being the best assistant to sweeping up the best, shampooing the best, cutting, colouring, the best image, the best name in the area, the best training, the best of everything. And that was the first goal for the business. The second goal was to make money, because we want to be here next year, I used to say. But the third goal was to have fun. And you couldn't have two of the goals without the third one. You can't make money and be the best in the area for too long if you're not enjoying it, if you're not having fun. But also, you couldn't just have fun and make money, because if you're not the best in the area, doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
But I used to have to then describe what having fun meant. What it meant was that the enjoyment of winning and being the best and making money and reaching those goals and targets along the way, for me that was motivation in itself.
Well, the business was growing really, weren't they? And for the business to grow, they had to grow.
Yeah.
So it kind of feeds off their kind of human needs, which is to be number one makes you feel significant, makes you feel important.
Yeah.
Making money gives you certainty and security. You know, having fun is part of that inclusion, the need to love and be loved. It's, you know, and then you're growing at the same time. It kind of ticks everyone's box in terms of that, creating that feeling or emotion, which is really what a motivation is about. It's creating emotions in people that are more positive, because there's two ways to motivate, isn't there? Ultimately, you can still motivate from a negative point of view. You know, if I said to somebody, do this or else,
Yeah.
it will motivate them to take action, but it won't necessarily, it doesn't have a positive, but it will still sometimes produce a result.
Yeah.
It just doesn't last long because it's a negative result. So finding that kind of sort of positive spin to put on things is what you're trying to do. In other words, stay on the kind of the more positive kind of reason for doing things, rather than if you don't do that, there's a what if. But you do need both. You do need an element of both. You just want it to be more the other side.
Something we didn't mention before, which I think is important that we did mention and is connected to what we're talking about now, is that in the last few years you've actually gone into competitions, business competitions and awards and those type of things, haven't you?
Yes.
And although we haven't mentioned it for at least 10 minutes, you have, because we're here again in Richard Wallace's salon doing this second
To the
podcast,
side of the salon.
the other side of the salon, and in the background you may notice that we have some awards. What are the awards, Richard?
Salon of the Year 2017 in the British Hairdressing Business Awards. We have Best Independent Hair and Beauty Salon in the National Hairdressing Federation Awards, and Best Front of House, which we won last year in the Federation Awards.
I mean, those are not small awards, are they? And you haven't been entering them for years, have you?
No, we won the first time.
Which is a bit embarrassing, really, isn't it? Usually people,
Yeah, take a bit of time.
because some of the best ones, they don't win first time, do they?
No.
I never. I went into the retail salon of the year. We got into the finals, and we didn't win.
But you gave someone else that entry to do, didn't you? In the end, it wasn't. You didn't kind of buy into the whole.
Oh, don't make an excuse, Richard. We didn't win,
Doesn't
and
make you
that's
feel
it.
better about
So I
yourself.
never went into it again.
Yeah.
I thought, no, it's a fiddle. But you proved that it's not a fiddle. And how did you get from entering the competitions? You found it really beneficial, didn't you?
Well, it has again. I mean, it's fantastic from the team point of view and the clients. It kind of confirms and everyone's choices for wanting to work somewhere like that. It reaffirms to the clients the reason they choose to come here is because it's the best salon. So it has that really good feel-good factor and makes great event on the night, great motivating event, and there's a real kind of legacy that comes from that. A lot of work went into it because what they want to really know, and I think why we won it, was because of the systems and structures and procedures and a lot of the kind of, I suppose, the boring stuff. It's not the British Hairdressing Awards where it's based on the hair, which is just, I mean, some of that is just outstanding. But it's that's being judged on someone's creativity, and some of the work is unbelievable. But to win the business one is kind of, what sort of turnover do you take? Are you profitable? How's that made up? What systems do you have in place for your client journey? Staff development, marketing, there's a whole host of things that had to go into that, and you've got to sort of sit and say, well, and I think that from a kind of cathartic perspective, when I put the kind of brochure together or the entry together, I thought actually it makes you realise how many things you have in place.
Yes.
So it was quite good from that point of view to sort of say, and go back and revisit things that I think actually that might be, although I'm right about it, we need to kind of work on that a little bit. That's dropped slightly. So.
Yes, so it reminds you of those certain areas where the business may have just took its eye off the focus on that area.
But it goes back to who motivates the motivator.
Which is where the day is about, is motivating.
Yeah, people talk about motivation, as you said, is a huge subject, but it starts with who's the person leading the business. And so often we talk to salon owners, don't we? And they're not motivated. So you're thinking they're sort of saying to us, how do you motivate a team? And you're talking to them, and they're for whatever reason, whatever challenges they're facing, they're not motivated. So you're thinking, well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to go back and be clear about what you want, and you have to find out and develop and work on your own motivation, because you're not going to inspire. I mean, motivation for me is about inspiring. You've got to inspire the team to want to do what you want them to do. So it's getting them to buy into your goal, to make so that your goal becomes their goal.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the goal is yours, and then you're pleasing people to it. But you want them to buy into it, and not buy into it under some sort of falsehood. You buy into it because actually there's something in it for them.
Yeah. It
has to win for you. It has to win for the team member. It has to win for the salon or the business. And it has to win for the consumer or the customer.
So
it only works for all three.
On the last podcast that we did, we spoke about vision, and we spoke about we mentioned foundations, and you said off camera that we need to be careful that we're talking about foundations, but what does foundations mean? And we talk about vision and be a bit more specific. It's a bit too woolly, what I call woolly. So we do need to be more specific in what we mean when we talk about these sort of things. And when we talk about the vision of the business when we very first started, that my vision for my business, going back to my barbershop days when I was at a barbershop, is that that really all I wanted to do was make money at the time, because Jenna had asked me, why did you go into business right at the very start? And I didn't want to be fair. I just happened to all of a sudden have a family
Well, going
And I
back to what we're going to touch on in a
money.
bit, your wants and needs changed.
That's right, yes. I needed to do something
Yeah.
because I wanted to make more money.
Because yeah, and that was for somebody else as much more than yourself. You'll do it more for somebody else than you'll do it for yourself.
And that's why I went into business, just to make more money. So once I got into business and it started to make more money, I just happened to have a business partner who wanted to. He wasn't content with what he'd got, and he wanted to grow the business more. I was one of those people that was very happy with what I'd got at that time. I didn't expect a lot.
Low expectations.
I had very low expectations, and I loved the barbershop environment where I can remember it now. And we used to be about 3 doors away from the bookies. And I used to go and get my lucky 15 bet on, which was about 5 horses through the race. I'd put me limit on every day, £2. And I'd come back, we had a television, I had my barber shop, and I think they smoked in them days. Everybody smoked, you know. So you'd be cutting somebody's hair and somebody'd say, do you want a fag, Chris? And I'd go, no, it's all right, I've got one on. And I'd have one on already. Hilarious. And I just loved the whole environment. But obviously, as things move on and your wants change as you grow and develop, and then we were very busy, and me and my mate, we employed a few more people, and I really enjoyed that environment. But then when we got another place and a bigger place, that's where eventually we had to take on this ladies' hairdressing, and it really went well, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And that's when I started to have more of a vision, and I started to learn more of the education. My vision started to come then with the education. And so then I started to have sort of, as I said in the first podcast, it didn't frighten me after a bit. It did, but I did start to see where I wanted to get to. And if there was anything that I can think of, my vision was that I wanted to be the best in the area. That was what I was after. I didn't want anybody to be better than us. I wanted us to be the biggest, the best. And I think that I used to play sport at school a lot, and I used to always be in teams. So I was used to being around lots of people, and I wasn't brilliant, but I was pretty good at sport. And I think it gives you that. You want to be better.
It makes you competitive, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's where, in business, that's where I came in. I wanted to be as good as I could possibly be in the end. But it took me some time to get into it. I must admit, I needed someone to help me to get to a certain level before I had the confidence to sort of take off. What about you, Richard?
Why did I come into hairdressing?
Why did you come into business? Why did you run your own business?
It was at the time. I got started early doing everything. So I was married at 22, as a father at 20, and at that time, to be fair, hairdressing the pay was just abysmal. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. It was balanced, so much.
Can you remember how much you was on? £76 I was on.
Well,
married with 2 kids, £76 a week.
Whatever it was, I can't remember, but it just wasn't enough. And so I was faced with a dilemma. I had an 18-month-old, and I just couldn't see where I was going to get out from where we were living. And I thought I had 2 options. I either kind of went into the building trade, which is what my family's sort of background was. And I'd spent years on building sites when I was a kid, just helping out and driving things, and just nature of being around a family that do that type of thing. And I got into hairdressing for a bit of a bet, and just happened to sort of find a space there. I either did that or opened a shop.
Yeah.
So I was at that dilemma. I thought, well, I'll open the shop, and if that doesn't take off, then I can always go into that, because it would pay more when I'd ever, be able to do what I wanted to do. So I opened the shop and just got busy. I was busy anyway as a stylist, but I just worked. I worked stupid hours, to be fair. I mean, I talked about it before. 60 hours a week I did for about. That's just on the salon floor for about 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done that.
You haven't done that in the whole career.
No,
But it's...
I haven't done that in a month.
No. But
I'm only joking, I do work hard.
But I did that for a period of time, then we grew, we moved to here, and same reason, ran out of ideas. Felt like I was winging it a little bit. So we were good technically at what we were doing, but I couldn't see, I was lacking business ideas. As much as I convinced myself I was knowledgeable, I really wasn't. And then we'd get and join the same organisation.
But doesn't it take you a lot to admit that? Because at the time, the last thing you would admit was, I'm winging this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going along.
You don't admit it. But you know yourself.
You know deep down in the back of your mind.
When you put your head on the pillow.
Yeah, and it keeps you awake at night.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, timing's everything. I mean, we opened it in 92, and then we moved here in 96. And at that time, when we look back on it now, they were golden years really, because it was, it was easy to get busier. It was easier. There was less salons around. There was less legislation around. It was a lot easier. I didn't think that at the time, but we had lots. We were really busy. We'd taken on staff, so that, a lot of the challenges that people are facing now, they weren't challenges back then. The challenges have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
But they were quite easy back then. But it was the things like, wage structures, and I'd learnt basically horrendous ones from previous bosses, and I just thought, I was just working all these hours, and I thought, I can't continue. That was really actually the catalyst for doing it. I think I was sat doing the wages on a Friday night at 9:30 with a can of beer in my hands, and I just thought, this isn't what I've imagined business. I've been in it for what was that, about 6-7 years then? I thought, this isn't changing. At some point this is supposed to get a bit easier. And then I thought, and that's when I joined. Just to get, how do I get out of this? And then took probably 2 years just to get to undo all the mistakes I made.
Yeah, I remember you saying that before.
2 years to undo all the mistakes I'd made. I kind of never lost sight of this. I have to do this. So as difficult as it was, and as hard as it was at times, I just kept going and kept going and kept going. I didn't give up at any point because I knew.
So what motivated you?
Competitiveness.
Yeah.
I'd kind of, in lots of ways, I was always brought up around a scarcity mentality around money. There's not enough money. It's a kind of limited, finite resource. But I've been around people with money, and I've seen people with money, and I just thought, I want a bit of that. I want to choose different things, and I want a different life to the life sort of, without knocking sort of my background, but I wanted a better life, and I was driven by that. And I had a family, and I thought, well, I want a different life for them as well. So that's what pushed me forward.
Because I'm thinking of myself now, and I'm thinking back, and I'm thinking one of the things that didn't motivate me, and you hear this a lot with people, true or false, I'm not too sure, because a lot of people make it as an excuse. But I can't remember anybody around me that had money. So I was quite content where I was. I remember my first house, I had a wife, and I got a wife.
Found her or something.
I introduced her like that, but this is my wife. I had a wife, and I had 2 kids. And we got our first house was a council masonette. I was over the moon. It was ground floor. We had a little tiny garden just by the washing area. And it was. And I'll tell you, the rooms, they weren't small, they was big rooms. I felt so privileged to have this masonette because we were surrounded by lovely people. That would have been 30 years ago, and we're still in touch with some of the people who were in the masonette living at the time. Even today, we still.
You let them go up and stay in the guest cottage.
We still see them, and Wendy, my wife, goes out to see some of them and has a drink and that. It was a great place, and I just felt so lucky that we'd got a lovely place. But I remember wanting to get money together so we could buy an house, and it was my first house that I bought. You could always see where we was moving to from the bedroom window of the house where I was staying at, so we could see it up this road, a private road off the council estate, and we bought that for 20,000. 20,000. That was my first house, and so. And again, it was.
But what's
I
interesting?
felt so privileged.
But what's
and
interesting
proud of
then
what
is
I
going
got.
back to the wants and needs. We're very different to the wants and needs now.
Yeah.
So if you're going to bring it back to motivation and getting down to, because we can wax lyrical about the old days.
Right, well that's it then. Thank you very much.
But in reality, the question is, well, that's all very good and well, but I've got people who work for me that need different. That I don't know how to motivate because they're not driven by the same wants and needs that I have, and I think that's the challenge, and that's where I think people get frustrated because they go, well, why aren't they more like me? Why aren't they more like the people I'm surrounded with?
Yeah.
And then we look and they go, and they're just not. For whatever reason, I'm sure we'll dig into it in a minute, but that's the challenge. If you've got a small team, then you're employing people that you can really work well with.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you're doing. So you're meeting your criteria for who you're going to work with, who you're going to recruit, becomes probably more important than when it's slightly bigger.
Mm.
Because you think, I've got to work alongside this person, and
Yeah.
so I've got to spend every day with them on the floor, and so I have to. That's really important because they've got to have share a lot of the same values, but they also have to sort of have a lot of the same sort of mannerisms and from kind of for a rapport point of view, because you've got to work next to somebody, but there's something that grates on you, or how they look, or some of the things that they aren't important to them, like silly little stuff that like someone doesn't put the top back on the the juice or something. It's almost like a family type thing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Where you're kind of going, well, they didn't do that, and you forgot to put the plug in the sink.
And you're so reliable on certain people because once you lose somebody from the small group, not only have you lost revenue, if we take that away though, but you've lost somebody who was part of the family now, and it takes a lot to bring them in.
And you can't motivate them from a hierarchy perspective because there's not enough tiers, there's not enough jobs to go around.
Yeah.
So in other words, people are accepting I've got a job and that's what I'm going to do, or they're thinking about it from a career, but not from a career perspective in terms of how they're going to grow through organisations, which is one of the things that hair and beauty have always had a problem with. There's no career path.
Yes.
In real terms, because what do I do? Like the owner's there and I'm here, and sometimes they're on the same price. And well, how do I get past them? That's why they don't do it. You can't motivate someone in that situation, because anyone who's motivated has those kind of characteristics. Is not going to go to an organisation like that. I think really motivated people, or people who've got the potential to be more, who want more for themselves, and innately know when they get somewhere whether this is the right place or not. Because they'll ask the right questions in an interview. What's the career path? What's the training like? Yes. Where can I go from here? And if someone comes into an organisation and doesn't ask those questions, then effectively what they're saying is, can I have a job?
And what I tend to do when I'm interviewing people is that, are we right for you? Not just, are you right for us? And because it's a two-way thing, yeah. And you might be fine and you might do really well somewhere else, but I don't think we're right for you.
Yeah.
And I would, and I have done, and I do. Refuse people because there's nothing wrong with that person. I just don't think we're the right place for this person. Maybe at that particular time.
Yeah.
But it's very important to get the match.
Yeah.
And that it fits in with the other people that have got
one of the challenges. Sorry to interrupt. One of the challenges is though with that, I think, is, and it's where we've noticed is within our industry, but I think it happens in other industries. Talking to friends who have other businesses, is they'll recruit somebody, and the person isn't right for the bit. They might be technically good. So in other words, they have all the skills required to do the job. It's just they're not right. So they're like a saboteur, or they've got something. They don't fit the organisation. And I think from a kind of motivational perspective, sometimes you think, well, because the business is good, we'll drag this person up. And all the research in the world will tell you that person will not rise to the expectation of their peers. The peers will lower their standard because you've brought somebody in who hasn't got the same. So I think one of the hardest things for people, one of the easiest actually things, one of the hardest things for them to do, is they seem to have an inability to get rid of people who are not right for the organisation, and they hang on to people. I mean, that happens all the time. When we're talking to salon owners, success partners at times.
Is that small and large business?
I think
mainly
I think it's mainly small because of the people who are like that. Usually, it's like bullies, to be fair. I'm not saying everyone is a bully that's in that, but they usually have company. you know, they draw people around them. So then they kind of use smoke and mirrors to sort of say, well, it's not about me, it's about the organisation, or there's a clique, or there's something else going on. But they know what they're doing. It's your ability to identify that quickly and to extract it.
Mm.
And you have to cut it out of the business like a cancer.
But I keep, as you talk, and I keep thinking back, and I think one of the biggest hurdles to get over from a business owner's point of view is that they come off the tools, which is what we mentioned before in the podcast, that when you've got time to deal with the business, it's so much easier than when you're having to work on the tools and deal with, well, you know that if you've got whatever size team, if you've got an issue over there and you're working with a client over here, you can't deal with it. And by the time you get round to dealing with it, the moment has gone and you've sort of lost the moment.
The moment's gone, but I think part of it, for whatever reason, is I agree with that. It is more difficult, but at the same time, you know, it's actually a really motivating. For anyone that's ever done it, it's actually very motivating to get rid of somebody who's dragging the team down for the team.
Yeah.
You know, you could have the best invents in the world and take them, you know, to fly them abroad, but which would be lovely. But nothing is as powerful as sort of taking somebody. You take somebody who is poisonous and has a negative energy to them, and they walk in every morning and kind of suck the life out of everybody, and take that person and get them out of the business. It breathes new life into a business. It's like getting rid of the client who's constantly the one that everyone dreads, and you carry on letting them come, and you think, well, you just get rid of the client. There'll be no positivity to the business. In fact, they're more of a drain. But for whatever reason, people I don't know if it's a fear to have the conversation. I don't know what it is, but I've seen where I've spoken to people where they're having a challenge with the person. That person is almost like sabotaging the business, and then they get rewarded.
Yeah.
You're like, why don't you just get rid of them? Oh, you know, because you know this and or whatever reason they find to reinforce it. That person is probably a bigger personality, and they're worried about the backlash. And that's where I think leadership comes in, because motivation is sort of, from a leader's point of view, is doing the right thing at the right time, because it shows leadership. This isn't going forward. This person isn't the right person. Let's extract them out of the business, and then we'll get on with it. That's, for me, that's leadership, because it's doing the right thing at the right time, even though it's difficult. But I think the key with motivating anybody is put them around people that are like-minded, and then you don't have the same challenges. You know, it's. I think that's really, for me, that's, you know, don't hang on to people.
So if you was motivating someone, one in particular, an individual, would you tend to, first of all, have to have the foundations, which we talked about, the foundations in place, which would be a wage structure.
Yeah.
I feel that pricing is a big one today, because when I'm interviewing people and I ask them, you know, why are you leaving the place where you've left? Apart from it being closed down, it keeps cropping up now, but they felt that they couldn't grow, which is one of the main reasons why people leave. They couldn't earn enough, and I always have a look at where they're coming from, and I look at the website and I look at the prices, and I can look at the prices of where they've come from, and I can see straight away why you couldn't earn any money. The prices are too low, and these are the reasons why people are demotivated, because they may be trying the hardest, they've got no leadership, so they're trying their hardest, no matter how long they try for, they don't feel as if they're getting anywhere. You've got to get the foundations right, haven't you, Richard? It don't matter how you go about motivating people, if you haven't got the wage structure right and you haven't got the prices correct, there's no way to motivate them long term.
All you've got then is to do the short-term gratification stuff.
Yes.
We'll run an incentive to get an iPhone, or a night out, or it's the small stuff.
Yes.
But they don't have that over the long term. And actually, most of those incentive type things, which I think the manufacturers have learned, or maybe not, is they don't really work. They don't act as motivators.
No.
They usually act as a demotivator to most of the team when they run an incentive and go, well, she'll win it.
Yeah. And
then the rest of the team are demotivated from it, and then introducing something. So we never run those sorts of things.
Yes.
They don't work. They think they do, because what are we going to do to get this product moving? The reality is, it's just they're always educating the wrong place. They look at everything in sort of just a short-term fix. How are we going to do this from a short-term? And no one takes the long-term view. Otherwise, how are you going to? Let's look at how this is going to look in 10 years' time. You're thinking, well, that isn't going to work, is it? You know, it isn't going to work in 10 years' time because it's not working now. So motivation for me is, like you said, you've got to have the systems in place that allow people to feel like they. I'll tell you what it is. If someone feels like they're growing, then they don't need motivating.
Not as much, no. They just need things to be.
They need to be supported.
Yes.
But if they can grow and they feel like they're growing, both, you know, money for most, when people are questioned on it and they look at people's reason for work or what motivates them the most, money always comes down, low down on the wants, to be fair. But that's work on the assumption for those companies that they're already earning a decent salary. Not if they're already bouncing along at minimum wage, which is what our industry does, which is why people say to us, you know, how do you motivate? How am I going to motivate my team? What do they earn? Most of them on minimum wage. I don't know. Yeah. Show them a movie. Buy them an ice cream. It's not. It'll do whatever you think. They're not going to be motivated, not for very long. And if they're happy with that, then you're never going to motivate them anyway, because all they've got is a pulse. And there's no.
So I'm going to
energy.
I'm going to just show an example of if I was talking to a member of staff.
Yeah.
What I would say to them and how I would describe.
Shall I be the member of staff?
No. Okay. I'm going to bring our board in.
Bring the board in.
And we're going to put it in. I'm going to show you what I do on the board. Would that be okay, Jenna?
Absolutely fine.
Because I think you can't describe this. You have to show it.
Okay.
And it's quite simple, but it's quite good. Is everything still?
Fine, yeah. Carry on.
I'll one of those, and I've got. And we do this a lot, don't we, Richard? But I think it's so good.
Well, you do.
Well, I do. But it seems to work for me, and it seems to work for the team. So what I tend to say is that straight away we put a little, and that's where we are now. This is how we go. This is where we are today. And I'll put today. That's where we are. And it doesn't matter if you're a senior stylist or you're a middle level or an apprentice, or, you know, it doesn't matter what level you are, but we have to come to terms with where we are today. Mm-hmm. And so we would talk to that person about where they are today, how they feel about it, and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. And then we would ask, is that if we put a timeline to this, which this is a timeline, and you could put the timeline into whatever you want. So it could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. After 3 years, depending on what age group you're on, they struggle after that, but let's go up to 5 years. I talked about 10 years not long ago in a team meeting. Oh, that went straight over the head. So, if we got, what I would ask is that where we are today, where do you want to be? And let's say that in 3 years' time.
Yeah.
And then we would go in 5 years' time. Where do you want to be? And they'd say, well, I want to have been promoted, or I want to earn so much more, or I want to have better skills, or what I want. So we'll put a mark on here, and we would draw a line to where that is in 3 years' time, and we would talk about what that is in 3 years' time. Now what you're getting is a picture in their mind, and what you're getting is what we talked about before, is a vision. Mm-hmm. And it's very important for us to get into their mind a vision of where they're going. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like when you're selling an house to somebody. They start to picture all the furniture in the house. They're starting to imagine it. It's their vision for it. It's exactly the same principle, is that they can start to see what it's going to be like in 3 years' time when I've achieved that. Mm-hmm. And you can say to them, imagine that you're there. How does it feel? Again, you're starting to get a very strong picture of what it's like. They start to get a little bit motivated and they start to get enjoyment from it. So that's where, well, let's go 2 years after that. what is it you want after that? Oh, well, 2 years after that, I might want to be here. And that might be another promotion or 2 promotions. And so we would draw a line onto that. And what does that look like? How much money would you expect to be on then? And how much would you be charging as a stylist? Because it's not so much how much you want to earn we talk about, it's how much you want to be charging. That's what we tend to talk about. So if I'm on £30 for a cut and finish here today, in 3 years' time I might want to be on 45 to 50 for a cut and finish. Because if you can get up to 45 and 50, it means that I can only pay out wages what people bring in, and it means that it can be earned easier. So you can start to see that we have some sort of pattern here, or we have a sort of a career path where we're going from 30 to 45 to 50. Do you think you could get to that level earlier than 3 years? Then they start to think of all the reasons why they can't or why they could. And it may be that they say, well, actually, I'm not that, my figures look quite good at the moment and I'm doing okay. Maybe I could bring it a little bit more forward. So it's 2 years. Let's have a look at that. 2 years then. So in 2 years' time, you could be charging £45 for a cut and finish. Yeah. What do we need to do to get there? Now what you're doing is, you've got their imagination now, you've got them motivated because they can start to picture themselves where they're going. And they will answer the question is, what do we need to get there? So they'll say, well, I'd like to get a little bit better in colour. Okay then, so we highlight it might be colour that we need to do. My cutting's fine, but I would like to improve on my communication with clients because my retail is a little bit up and down. Now we're starting to get to the real needs of what to achieve their wants. And so I need to get better at colour, I need to get better at communicating with my clients in a consultation to get the best out of my clients. And now we've got a path for a 2-year path to get. Once you start to get the picture in their minds, it's so much easier to motivate somebody, isn't it, than it is when you're just sitting down with somebody and, you know, you're not doing very well with the figures at the moment. And
what it comes is they visualise it.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to the brain can't differentiate between what's imagined and what's real.
Yeah.
So they start to picture themselves in it. And one of the things that comes out of all the research on communication now, especially with young people, is they want regular communication.
Yeah.
You can't lead them through 3 to 6 months anymore. They want kind of monthly. A monthly is about regular, to sort of sit down and say, how am I doing? Where am I going?
Right.
And so what you're saying to them is that I'm going to take time out of my day, or somebody in the team will do that, to go through their figures, and it sort of says, are we on track or not? Because you are holding them accountable, because being human, they'll go up and down.
Yeah.
And they can go off track.
Yeah.
But our goal is always just a bit like a business, is to bring them back on track. That's what we're talking about, a leadership role or managing from behind, if you like, is that the ability to bring people back when you get a sense that they're going off away from what their goals are, or that you can see them losing interest, you can see that there's something not right about them, something's changed, and then if you're having those regular conversations with them and you're intuitive to that, then you stop them going off track so quickly, and you bring them back on track.
What you're looking for, which is where most people get this wrong, I believe, is that once we set them a target in their mind, you're not looking for where they go off target, you're looking for when they do something right.
Yeah.
Once they do something right, you're back over and you're going, that could be the next day, that could be the next week, but you go over and you go, I saw that colour, because we was talking about colour, I saw that colour, what you did, that was fantastic, and I've set that. We're looking at a colour course later on, but you're sort of emphasising on how well they're doing rather than trying to wait for something that's not gone right.
It's easy to focus on the negative.
Absolutely.
And as human beings, we're conditioned to do that. So for most human beings, 75% of our sort of internal thought process is negative. It's been conditioned in us. And so it is easy to find the problems, especially if you're looking at life at the time and you're not motivated or things aren't going well. It's a real challenge to find. That's why I said you've got to learn to manage yourself well first, because unless you're managing your own psychology, you're never going to be able to manage the psychology of somebody else.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So you're sort of saying, well, I want them to be more motivated. How do you feel about business at the moment? Oh, I'm having trouble with that. You're thinking, whoa, well, you know,
Yeah.
you're on a lose-lose straight away. It sort of says, well, I know you're going through challenges, but you know how. I mean, we've seen quite a lot of work with that Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yes, that's right.
A fantastic thing where he talks about like a refractory period, and he sort of says that, you know, if something happens to you, and let's talk about business, someone leaves or you get something that can affect you, knock you off course in regard to your own business, how quick can you recover? You know, is it a week? You know, is it a day? Is it an hour? Is it a week? Is it a month? Does it knock you off course so much that you never get back? In other words, how quickly can you manage your psychology to get yourself back on track? And so when we talk about business, you know, over the time that we've had it, from a motivational point of view, we've had lots of business success, but we've had business failure as well. And that knocks your confidence in it. But how quick can you let it go?
Yeah.
You know, motivation comes from your resilience to manage things and then move on.
Yeah.
And stay on track with what your vision is for the business and for that person. And if you can do that for yourself, then it's easy to help people do that, because you could have a stylist that goes off track for a while, and it's your ability to communicate to them that that's okay. I was expecting that anyway, so let's look at what we're doing and how we're going to get this back on track, what's missing, what's changed, what's different. And that's part of more of a kind of mentoring, coaching style of managing than it is managing.
Yeah.
Most management, the word's actually almost wrong really, because we're sort of saying all you're doing is managing people and managing their behaviour. That's quite draining to sort of manage, because there's a like negative thing to that really. But if you're mentoring somebody or you're coaching somebody, then you're constantly looking for, as Chris said, the positives in that.
Yeah.
So you're constantly looking for things that work rather than things that don't work. Anyone who comes into this industry now has had to fight their way into it a little bit, so they want it
Yes,
more.
I would agree with that, because it's not easy to get into this industry now.
Well, it's really easy to get into it, but it's difficult at a young age because the parents are against them coming into it, the schools are against them coming into it.
But there aren't many places that take on apprenticeships now.
No,
is
it's too
there?
expensive.
It is, it's too expensive. So very few places that you can get into. So when we do take people on, they're tried, tested youngsters who have gone through a system to make sure that we've got the right people. But I've got to say that when I'm bringing these youngsters, new youngsters in, they're smart kids. Because of the phones and the IT and the computers and that, their brains work really fast and they're very smart. Overall, if you get them on board, they can grow very quick.
You can't sit them down for 3 hours, they've switched off. You know, you have to kind of short bursts, you have to keep their work varied. And also, I think from just dealing with our own industry, a lot of things now that now we don't have the. I mean, years ago, and I think when I used to be a trainee, you'd be doing the toilet, sweeping the. You know, you'd be doing a lot of those really crappy jobs. To be fair, is any way of sort of saying it. We don't have our team. They're not going to do that. It's like footballers cleaning the boots for the old professionals. You're not going to find a young kid who's 17 earning 30, 40 grand a week who's going to go in the morning and clean boots. I mean, they'd pay someone to do that. I'm not cleaning your boots. I mean, the old professionals could have said, well, in my day, that's what we did. And reality is that them days are gone. So you're dealing with you can't run business now with the old model. It just doesn't work anymore. So you're having to really change how you look at it and say, what do I want for this person, and how am I best? What's my best strategy for doing it?
But what I would say is when they do get somebody good, they appreciate them. Where I don't think young people have been appreciated in the past. And that's why when you say that people they get bored quick, I think that they won't put up with it. They got bored before, they just didn't say. I think now they'll say.
The world has changed, and you say, well, they're not motivated in the same way. So if I'm not happy, I'll give up. I'll go and do something different. And we look and go, well, what's the matter with you? That's part of, life is hard and arduous and we work through it. And they go, no, I'm going travelling. Or I'm going to do something else. I'm going back to college, I'm going to do. And you're thinking, oh, right, okay. And it kind of blows your mind a little bit. I mean, but as you said, I kind of admire it. I mean, I saw it in my own son. I mean, he's a Magic Circle lawyer in London, and because he works, he's into triathlon and Ironman and things like that, and the hours were just unbelievable and how they were kind of abused. He said, "I'm giving it up. I mean, I was a trainer for a bit, I mean, he's gone back into it now in law, but for a bit, he was like, kind of came home and you're a bit like, I kind of admired his courage, to be fair.
Yeah.
You have to look at that and go, well, that's not, I'm looking at it from my own perspective
Yeah.
and my own filter, and I can't look at the team, my team, and look at it through my filter anymore, because my filter was the wrong way to look at it. I've got to take myself out of it, put myself into their position to a certain degree, and because you've got to balance it with what's right as well. There is a balance between what their needs are and what the business needs are, and find a way to make them compatible. But that's challenging.
Just coming back to motivating as well, if we're motivating team members, is that we tend to, our team members have their own figures as well if they're stylists, don't they?
They track their own,
Track their own figures so that they can see how they're growing.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference.
Well, if someone's, one, you can track whether somebody's engaged, because if they're tracking. If they're not tracking them, then they're not growth
Do you
orientated.
make them do it? Because
no.
or it's an option. If they want to, they can. If they don't want to,
actually, we do make them do it. We do make them do it actually, because we sort of says, well, we still need to look at it. So if we're sitting with a one-to-one and someone turns up with no figures, you're like, well, why wouldn't you do your figures?
and you have a figures book, don't you?
We have figures books. Yeah, so they're tracking their own. What you're saying to them is, yeah, you work here and you work for Richard Wallace Hair, and we have systems and structures. But within this organisation, you are in charge of your own destiny. So your destiny is in your hands as much as it is mine. So
Are they
we're both
expected
committed
to grow?
Yeah, they are. Well, they're expected to grow on the first few levels to get off the first few levels. It becomes harder to get promoted as they get up the price list, because the client's expectations are different. It's harder to get promoted as you get more expensive, because there's certain clients that won't pay that that high end price. But on the bottom levels, yeah, they're expected. You can't have someone sitting on bottom levels for a long period of time, because they're not going to earn any money. They'll become
Which is
demotivated.
that's your concern, that they won't earn enough money,
They won't.
because you know that's going to be an issue in the future. So your concern is not that they're not growing; it's that the problems that's going to be coming up is that they're not going to have enough money, and that's a demotivator.
Yeah.
And then you've got a problem motivating. I think a lot of people would sort of say, well, I find it very difficult to motivate my team. Maybe it's that you're not looking at it from the right way, that you should have been looking at it well before they got to that point.
I actually wrote, because I thought, well, what are the key, from a motivational point of view, what are the key things? If I was a business owner and I'm thinking about key things, first of all, you need to put in place you need to make sure you've got the right team on board.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that the people who are working for you are the right fit.
Yes.
And eliminate the ones who aren't. That's the first thing. You've got no chance if you don't do that. You need to, which is about losing the saboteurs, the negative people in the team. So you have to eliminate that, make sure the team are on board. They need to have a clear, achievable career path that you can sell to somebody and demonstrate that that's already in place. They need to be able to take control of their own destiny, to be able to feel like their future is in their own hands.
Yeah.
And they need to have a clear vision. You need to have a clear vision as a business owner for yourself and for the team, and stay on track with that.
I think that if you're not into business, or you haven't been around very much business education, if I was listening to that, I think I haven't got a clue what you're on about. But it's very surprising when you do start to get educated in business. It's not as difficult.
It's getting around. I said
It's getting around.
I said this on the last podcast,
people.
and that was getting around. You've got to get around successful people.
Yeah. And
That's the only thing you can, from a motivational point of view. There's a reason why sort of very successful people gravitate to other successful people.
yeah.
They do it for that reason. That's why they have these gatherings, and it's because I need to get around people who are going somewhere, who are like-minded. Yeah, it's a bit like, I always kind of use an analogy of I'm going back a few years ago when roundabouts used to be proper roundabouts, where in children's playgrounds where kids would get on the roundabout and they'd be full of young kids, and you'd have to to get that thing moving require usually 2 people, but so much effort was required to get it going, and you'd run around a couple of times and you get it going. Once it was going, all you had to do was stand and just keep. The effort required to keep it moving was a lot less than it was required to get it started in the first place. But the minute you stop and it comes to a grinding halt, then it's a huge amount of effort to get it going again. So your goal as a leader or as a manager or whatever title you want to give yourself is it's what you're doing. What you're doing to keep everything moving through. And it is keeping an eye on the figures, so we track everything. We stay on top of that, and so if we see anomalies kick in, then we're straight on it. We don't. So I mean, without going mopping in paper back into it, but if you start to see something change, then it's a quick snapshot. You look at it and you think, well, that's a snapshot of something of a time, and you start to see a pattern begin to emerge. It might only be a 3 or 4 week period, but you think, oh, that's if it's a decline, it's a decline, or if it's an increase. Both of them can have different reasons for that happening, but you look and you think, right, that's a snapshot. Now, I'm not tracking that over a 6 or 12 month period, otherwise that's a trend. So I want to capture the snapshot and look at it and go, right, let's look at what's happening here, and do we need to make some adjustments very quickly, or do we just watch something ride out? And so that's the kind of what I call the kind of macro view of the business, looking at the big picture. But that big picture always comes down to, which is the essence of what a hairdressing salon is, or most sort of beauty type businesses, which is just a series of columns. They're just stylist columns. And so then you look and say, well, who's on track? And you go, well, they're on track, that's fine. So who? And then you sort of get down into the detail and so, well, actually, where am I working on here? Who do I need to speak to? And then which is the best strategy for that person? So some people work really well from, some people do work well from occasionally needing to kick up the rear. They go, I haven't been doing this, and well, come on, let's get back on track again. And some people need that, and some people need an arm around the shoulder to sort of say, it's just not like, and there's not one size fits all. It's your ability to kind of have those different strategies. People think because very often they're good with people, they should just have these different flows. But the reason we have those different strategies, you went out and learned. I did a life coaching course, I did an NLP for business course. I mean, communication and understanding people and being able to ask questions. I did a life-saving course, but it wasn't the same course. I didn't think it was. I ain't the best swimmer at the best of times. You would have drowned, didn't you, once? Do you want to tell people what they need to do, Chris? Because I thought you was going to say that. So, because I'm such a up-to-date on my techni-phobia, I want you to comment. I want you to subscribe. Now that's really good. Share and like. It's right, isn't it? That's what you got to do.
You got it covered there.
So hopefully you get something out of today, and it didn't sort of depress you too much. But I think that I'm thinking of the things now to set up for the next one, which I think you will find interesting, because I think the next one, what we're going to do is some fundamentals to help you visualise how I turn that business. And also, hopefully, I mean, from a motivational point of view, what we're saying is there's no quick fix with it. Oh no. And the minute you think about that, then if that's what you're looking for, then you're not going to get it. What we're saying is, of course it is, but there's the systems and things you have to have in place, and the understanding that you're trying to, you've got a difficult audience to kind of to work with now, and so you have to. It's about adapting. Yes. You mentioned it last time, Darwin, which is it's not the strongest of the species; it's the one who can adapt the quickest. That will be, and that is about business now. We're having to adapt so quickly because things are coming at us too quickly, almost overwhelming, to be honest. But you have to be able to do that, and there will be successful business standing at the end of that. Yeah. At the end of this, and it's only those ones who can adapt the quickest that will change. What we want to do is to sort of say, this is where you are, this are the challenges that we're facing, these are some ideas about what we're doing, but this is where we're at. Yeah. The only real answer and solution for them is to get around people who will share that information, or at least give them some answers towards it. Smashing. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jenna.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, and the next one is not, even though you do reference salons, because that's your example of what you work with, it's not specific entirely to salons, would it be?
No.
So it could
No.
be applied to any sort of business.
Absolutely.
So any questions, put them in the comments or send them in.
Well, it's relevant to, I mean, we're talking about small businesses. 96% of the businesses in this country are small businesses. So it's all this stuff is the same. Whenever we speak to anybody, and we've done work with dentists and things as well, it's
You think you got troubles?
it's the same thing. Anyone that has an employee or has employees now has got the same challenges. So,
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
It's everybody.
And so adapting to, if you haven't done it in the past, got more into business, I think you'll find it enjoyable rather than something that you'll wonder why you've avoided it for such a long time.
It's fun.